Raj. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm very, very well. It's good to talk to you.
Good, likewise too. Okay, I'm just waiting for your screen to come up. And there you are. Excellent. So, Dave, how you been the past few weeks?
Been very good, Raj. Things are becoming the new norm, as it were.
Yeah, are you getting used to it then?
Yes, I think so. I think certainly the novelty element of it has passed us by, and it's become very much life as normal. I mean, personally, I'd always spent a lot of time working from home anyway, but certainly it's been really, really exciting to see how that's adapted and how the team have taken to it as well.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Well, yeah, I want to thank you again for joining us today. We had some really good feedback from the last time you were on with us, so we thought, hey, we want more. We want more. So
It's nice to be in demand.
it is, it is. So I thought I'd take the opportunity maybe just to dig in a little bit deeper about, leadership from a distance, because it's what you do. You've had a few more weeks experience of it. So that's kind of the theme of what I want to cover off today, if that's okay with you.
That's absolutely fine.
Excellent. And just as an aside, I mean, how are things looking in the UK these days? Are you guys still under lockdown?
Yeah, we're very much under lockdown. The review of our first lockdown was actually due to take place today. The decision on that has been pushed back towards the end of the week, but the indications in the media is that we're probably going to remain so through till about the middle or end of May, with a view to seeing how things might relax then. But on the positive side, we're seeing the number of new cases decline day on day, and the number of hospital admissions decline day on day. So fingers crossed, we're beginning to approach, if not the beginning of the end, certainly the end of the beginning.
Excellent. Winston Churchill.
Indeed.
Yeah. Just a quick thought as well is I know you before this pandemic, you guys you had a centre in Prague, and where was the other centres?
Yeah, centre in Prague, centre in Wrocław in southern Poland,
Okay.
and then our tier 2 operation was in London.
Okay. So I know that for example, in Prague and the Czech Republic, there things are getting a little bit looser. Is that very much on your radar as well in terms of what whether you're going to continue on with work from home, or how does that feature?
Yeah, I mean the regulation changes in Prague in the last few days have really been more about the government there deciding on a different level of shops and establishments that can reopen, rather than a broader reopening. And certainly they haven't yet moved to the idea of social establishments such as bars and restaurants opening. So we're still some way away. Some of the restrictions in the Czech Republic are actually deeper than those that we're seeing here in England or in Poland, in that it's a legal requirement for you to wear a mask in public in the Czech Republic, whereas that's not the same here in UK or in Poland.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's interesting how it's different. I was talking to somebody yesterday in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, and they actually have like zones now. So they have a red zone where if you're in the red zone, you have to do things differently than other zones.
Yeah.
And it's very, very interesting to see how this is kind of changing around the world, and it's literally a minute by minute change as well.
Really, it's
So
incredible.
it is. We're learning something new every day. But thankfully, we've got the technology to reach out across the ocean to speak to you, and
Yes.
and hopefully the weather's not too bad there in the UK today.
Very pleasant, actually. We had lovely weather through the Easter weekend, and it remains sunshiny and not so warm, but pleasant enough.
Okay, but still warm enough for you and your barbecue.
Indeed.
Okay, excellent. So just going back to business a little bit, the structure that you guys used to have when you operated your centres in terms of, manager, team leaders to tech support people, what was the sort of ratio, and has that ratio now changed somewhat now you're working remotely?
Okay, so the structure internally when we're in the office is that I have departmental leads in each of those locations, so a site lead, as it were, and then a number of team leaders beneath those, looking after circa 6 to 8 technical support engineers.
Okay.
Now, obviously, now that what's changed is that technical support engineer activity isn't as available directly for the agent in that they can't get up and go and speak to their team leader. However, what we have found is that we've maintained that same structure. We're simply using different technology. And so the questions that an engineer or an agent may have of their team leader now are asked via chat pages or Slack or something similar to that.
Right.
And actually, the result that we're seeing in that is that handling time is reducing, and hold time is reducing, and so on and so forth. So actually, it's enabling us to become more productive as a result of the fact that people don't have that requirement to get up and walk to a team leader's desk rather than just type a question. But it also encourages the engineer to be more confident in their own ability and to take the steps that are required without looking for that approval or ratification from their team leader. So it's been good in helping people develop their own confidence.
Oh, that's really interesting. So do you still keep the same sort of structure where you have like one team leader for 6 technicians?
Yeah, exactly that.
And the team leaders, I mean, or do you call them team leaders? Sorry.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Okay.
In our contact centre as a service, they're referred to as team leaders. In our unified communication centre, they're referred to as pod captains. But that's just a cultural thing in those 2 centres.
Pod captains, interesting. Okay, so talking about your team leaders and your pod captains, I mean, how are they finding this as well now that they're perhaps not getting as many questions coming their way? Are they still able to, keep themselves busy throughout the day?
Yeah, without a doubt. In fact, again, it's helping to drive productivity in that they are still having some questions over the chat the chat channels. But in addition to that, it's given the opportunity to kind of do a deal more QA sessions, some quality side-by-side listening, albeit that's virtual,
Right.
and really start to help to build coaching plans and identify individuals' development needs. So yeah, they're all keeping very, very busy, and as I say, we're very fortunate in that we have the technology ourselves to facilitate real virtual virtual conversations as if we were in the same room together.
Interesting. Do you so how many direct reports do you actually have coming into you?
I've got 5 direct reports across various different parts of our organisation. That's the Tier 1 UC operational lead, the Tier 1 contact centre as a service operational lead. Then we have a Tier 2 operational lead, and then a couple of other in-region people that look after some critical case activity.
Excellent. And in terms of how you're keeping in touch with your direct reports, what are you finding is the best way for you to manage and motivate and keep them engaged in the day-to-day operation?
Well, that's one of the really interesting changes that's occurred over the last few weeks, in that it was always all too easy to drop an email to somebody or to make a quick phone call. And what we're finding is that it's becoming ever more important and ever more enjoyable for us to jump on a video conference link. And so I'm probably getting more genuine face-to-face time with my diary reports now than I had done previous to us working this remotely from one another. And we've actually made it internally for ourselves a real rule that as a first course we should use video conferencing. In fact, one of my direct reports joined a meeting this morning, and he was out on his daily exercise, so he dialed in from his mobile and was referred to by his colleagues as our retro member.
Interesting. Interesting. So that's a really interesting point as well that you're making about communications, because
Yeah.
I know if you send an email to somebody, you've got to wait for reply, and then
Exactly.
and often you're waiting. Things can get miscommunicated. So it makes a lot of sense what you're suggesting. And
Yeah.
and what about the overall number of technicians you have in the business? How many do you have, and how are you generally keeping in touch with everybody?
Well, across all the different parts of the business, there's somewhere in the order of 60 to 70 technical engineers that come under my control. And actually, again, this change to remote working has massively enhanced my relationship with those people, because what would happen previously is that most of our communication would either be me presenting remotely, and therefore I'm not really having the one-to-one engagement. Or indeed, if I was in the centres, either in Prague or in Wrocław, I might pass people in a corridor, or I might meet them on the centre floor, and we might exchange a couple of words, but really not a great deal more. Whereas what this current situation has really forced through is that now I speak to them all over video conferencing. Everybody's got their own little part of my screen that I'm looking at, and therefore I'm communicating with all of them directly. And so it really has built the relationship between my direct reports and I. It's been really, really encouraging and pleasing.
That's really interesting, because again, if you're visiting the centre, you've only got a certain number of times that you can do that during the year, but now you've got an opportunity of talking to them every working day potentially.
Yeah,
Scary.
absolutely. And yeah, working life gets in the way sometimes, even
Yeah, exactly.
still. And so, I do, when I have my daily conversations with my direct reports, from time to time say, I feel it's been a little while since I've spoken to the teams. Can you just throw something in my calendar for that? And what we're realising is I'm kind of doing that almost every other day. So certainly there's 2-3 times a week where I'm speaking to everybody in my organisation, and they seem to appreciate that. And I think in these times, there's no such thing as too much communication. I think we all have to do what we can to keep broadening everybody's circle of people that they communicate with.
And how are you finding distilling that message down to your, the team leaders, the pod captains, etc.? Are they embracing the same sort of philosophy as you? So they're in regular contact with their direct reports? Yeah.
There's a little subset of meetings going on in business hours and out. It's quite encouraging to watch, and quite amusing in some ways, because it's really bringing people together that perhaps wouldn't have communicated in the working environment in a way that they have no choice but to do so now. There's lots and lots of different levels. Certainly team leaders to team leaders to share concerns, best practices and others. And similarly then from one level up or down and even beyond. As I say, I'm getting frequent communication with the engineers at tier 1 and tier 2 level, and in fact we've even broken out the idea of socialising together as well, and had a I'm not sure what the term rest of the world is, but in the UK it's a game called Pictionary, and so we spent an evening playing Pictionary with one another. So yeah, there's lots that has to be done to make sure everybody's spirits are kept high, to make sure everybody remains enthusiastic, and we're doing as much as we possibly can to make that happen.
Excellent. Well, you've got to have good drawing skills to use Pictionary, my friend. I'm terrible at that.
Let me tell you, I don't have, and I'm sure when my team watch this back, they will all be giggling with joy at the suggestion of Russia, which will remain an internal joke, but one day I might share it with you.
Excellent. Well, that's all good. I'm looking forward to that next time we meet in person.
Indeed.
So, and a question that I was thinking of as well is, when you're dealing with tier 1, tier 2, do they ever need access to technology to actually try and diagnose problems, or you don't need that level of sophistication in your centres?
No, they absolutely do. Almost on every interaction that we'd have with a customer, there's a requirement for technology, whether it be to access our platform portals, or whether it be to remotely access the customer's desktop, or many other aspects. And all of that technology is provided to each of our agents in their home via our own integration tools that ensure that it really makes no difference from an engineer's point of view, whether they are sat in their own home now or in our offices either in Wrocław or in Prague.
And is your operation 24/7?
The Wrocław operation is 24/7. The Prague operation is slightly less than that. It doesn't really work through the very small hours, but we have on-call solutions around that. So, but certainly the Wrocław operation is a full 24/7 operation.
And the staff who are working from home, they kind of don't mind that then, because they don't have to travel in, and And
Fits other people. You know, it's amazing. It fits different circumstances. I have one member of the team in particular in Roslav who, as everybody is having to work from home, his wife is working from home, and they have their child, and they don't live in a huge property, and so it's a little difficult. So he's now during this period of time working consistently on the overnight shift because it actually suits their purpose now that his wife works during the day. They get some evening time to look after the child, and then his wife goes to bed and he works the night shift.
Well, that's good. That's good. And talking about the sort of quality and managing quality and performance, I mean, what sort of how are you doing that? Are you still listening in remotely? Do you record screens? And, you know, is there somebody looking after all of that?
Yeah, we're not recording screens. Certainly, we're not recording any video communication between ourselves and customers. But we do still have all of the same access in terms of being able to listen into calls remotely or being able to revisit call recordings. We can certainly access any of the notes on a customer's account, and we can use our CRM tools in exactly the same way as we would were we within the office. So genuinely, the major differences that we're encountering is the way in which we need to interact with one another. And I would, whilst I miss the idea of being able to get face to face with my guys, and I certainly miss the opportunity to have an odd beer or some lunch with them, but actually this whole exercise, this whole situation has meant that the interaction with those people has become more positive and more practiced. So from an operational perspective, I'm struggling to see a weakness.
It also, I think, brings you closer together from a more personal perspective because everyone sees, everyone's seeing where you live, and okay, they might only see part of your room, but it makes it a lot more personal in terms of the communication. So I see a lot of value in that as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and it brings in conversation. I have one of my guys where he's sitting in his home, he's got 3 samurai swords behind him. So guess what? We talked about his samurai swords. It's exactly that sort of thing.
Absolutely, that's brilliant. Now you're talking about. You mentioned a minute or two ago about sort of video. Are you actually doing any sort of video calls now with customers as well?
Yeah, we can do. We don't ask a customer. It's not like our first thought in dealing with a customer, but we certainly have tools that enable us to remotely access the customer system, and that brings a video element with it, and therefore we can see the customer's desktop. We can also see the customer, so we can have that conversation, and that has led on a number of occasions to customers then not switching off the video and continuing to interact with us via the video.
Excellent. So before you moved to working from home, did any of you guys ever use video technology in that way?
In that capacity, yes. So if we were remotely accessing a customer's desktop, then, as I say, there would be a window similar to that we're seeing now in Skype. Yeah. There will be a window that allows you to see yourself and also to see the other party, but also then giving access to their screen. So it makes it a much more personal interaction because you're able to show the customer what it is that you're doing to assist them, but you're also having a conversation directly with them, and it removes that horrible silence that sometimes we might get on a call.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And how do you now you've been doing this a few weeks, Dave? How do you stay motivated, or is that not an issue?
Well, no, I think I need motivation just like everybody else. Contrary to what might be believed, I am only human. No, there are challenges. I think one of the things that I did a couple of weeks ago that really helped was I was sat here at home one night and thought, you know what, this is getting a bit much. I'm going to take tomorrow off, and I took a day off and I sat and vegged, as it were, in the lounge and did absolutely nothing. And the following day, I felt motivated and ready to go again. And so everybody needs their motivation. I've got my colleagues, my peer level colleagues, most of whom are in America, and so I have a lot of interaction with them. We're all working as a team and helping each other as well. And it's done exactly the same thing with those relationships. I'm now much closer to some of my colleagues out there than I was 4 weeks ago. And we're all helping one another, and it really has made, for want of not wanting to sound like a cliche, it really has made it a global village.
Exactly. And do you feel that people maybe are putting a bit of extra effort in because they're more contactable than ever before?
I think hugely so.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit. There was a little bit of a time to get people to encouraged to use video conferencing rather than calls, and that might have been that we were all playing that game of being on a conference call, but perhaps busying ourselves with something else at the same time. I think now it's making our engagement in the conversations that we're having complete, because we can all see one another and we know whether we're paying attention to one another or not. So I think it's actually, again, progressed things rather than taking anything away from us.
So, $64,000 question. Assuming the lockdowns are all clear, cease to exist, do you think now, a few weeks on, that you'd like to retain some elements of what you're doing now, or maybe have more of it in the future, where you're working from home?
I 100% want to retain the flexibility. I think we've demonstrated that it can work, and I want to be able to continue to utilise that. I also 100% want to maintain our bricks and mortar centres. I think that for all of the positivity that I feel that we've been able to take out of working in this way, it would become it will become boring in exactly the same way that any other task becomes boring after a period of time. And I think there isn't anything quite like personal social interaction. I miss the opportunity to say a proper hello to people. I miss the opportunity to shake somebody's hand, and to thank them face to face, and pat them on the back physically for the work that they've done. And similarly, we're missing a lot of people's birthdays, and that's a lot of cake that we haven't getting to eat at the moment.
Yeah, there's a few things there that I can certainly agree with you in terms of what we're missing, because as you know, I travel a lot as well.
Yeah.
I think the shaking hand things, though, is probably going to change quite a bit moving forward, but I do miss the beer, especially the beer in Prague, and it's certainly good there and cheap. The last thing, Dave, just can I ask, does Dave have any top tips for any other sort of leaders out there in terms of other things that you've learned, lessons learned in terms of managing remote teams?
I think I said this when we spoke before, and I don't think that there's any value in not saying it over and over and over again. And that is, the number one tip is communicate with your team frequently, one-to-one and in a group. You cannot over communicate at this time. I think keep everybody's spirits up, and be really honest and get them to be aware and start to understand the signs in each other when somebody might be telling you that they're feeling great, but you can kind of see that they're not, and really look to make sure that we all carry one another through this. I think the other tip that I would really strongly recommend is there is an enormous amount of really useful technology, both business technology but also social interaction technology, some gamification stuff that will really keep people motivated. And look it up, speak to other people in your network, make use of every resource that's available to you, because it's incredible the amount of resources that are available.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been brilliant again, Dave, and thank you very much for your time, and stay
Always
safe, my friend, and I'll look out next for you when you have a barbecue, and I'll join you virtually.
But we'll certainly do that, if not manage to get you here at some point yourself, Raj.
Exactly.
It's good to talk to you again. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.